I am a multifamily value add investor. I do not buy storage. I do not build. I do not buy retail. I do not buy office. I get all of the above sent to me weekly, right? Over the years, everybody thinks they can be a real estate investor everywhere. I decided to go really, really deep on only one asset class and what I knew.
Tell us about the transition from going from your W-2 job into full-time real estate. What did that look like? What were your first hires?
Yeah, it was hard. Looking back, I think I would have done it maybe 1 or 2 years sooner than I did, but I'm glad I did it. And you said, how did that transition go? I mean, you go from a consistent paycheck for a decade, right? Even though at this point, to be exact, I had 252 units. That's quite a bit of cash flow. So I knew I had the cash flow. I was still scared. But then I made the jump, and then I knew right away because, as what I shared with you before, it makes no sense to leave my W-2 job and then not build my own property management company. As I've been looking at these apartments, like we weren't transitioning them as fast as I want to. And I knew all my money is tied up in these properties. So the only way to get my money back out is to figure out how to have more control, which led to the property management company. And then I built it right away with a construction arm so that we could not only acquire and run the properties, but we could reposition them, meaning that we could do the majority of the rehab in-house. And we have some, maybe we'll talk about this later, but we have some incredible processes within our construction arm. But first hire was the president. So I knew somebody that was really, really good with leadership. And I knew enough about myself because I really love to have control over the business that if I didn't hire somebody to run it right away, that I'd be working in it and not on it, which was everything for me because I really wanted to scale this business. And I don't think if I made that decision, I'd be where I was today because I think I'd be so obsessed with the systems and the operations and just working in the day-to-day that I would not have time to find the deals, to acquire the deals, to come up with business strategy. So as the first key hire, I hired a business like an office manager to help me with the phones and the leasing and the accounting. And then we had a maintenance tech and a maintenance leader. So pretty leader heavy, right? President, like kind of office manager, and then like a leader in the field. But every person I hired was not afraid to roll up their sleeves. So they weren't doing much leading back then, right? It was like 90% task, 10% leadership. But they all had leadership experience. Only the maintenance tech had maintenance experience or real estate experience. Everybody else that I hired had no real estate or no property management or no construction background, which is, something that I think is unique about my business today. It's a lot more about leadership, who has great attitude, who has great work ethic, and then we'll train you on the rest.
So how many years were you in real estate before you started hiring these positions?
I started in 2013, so I was acquiring real estate for about 6 years. So I had about 6 years worth of experience, over a decade worth of leadership and operational experience, not related to real estate, but I think real estate is a business. We just forget about that. And then in 2019 is when we started building the property management / construction business.
Awesome. And then how long were you working for Target? And then was there, I don't know if you mentioned the specific reason of why you got out. I know you said you looked at cash flow and stuff, but what was the main reason that you're looking and going,
great question.
I got to get out of this and do this full time?
Yeah. So I read a lot of books on ROI, and finally I came across a book on ROT, return on time. So I literally remember reading this book on a flight home. At this time, I was helping with operations across the enterprise. We were flying out to different areas of the United States. And I'm on my way home, and I'm reading this book, and it's talking about ROT, like your return on your time. And I really, really enjoyed my time working at Target. Like, it just taught me so much at a young age. So, and I'm just like, I just was always just a hard worker. So I'd put in 70 hours a week at my Fortune 50 job. And then I'd put in 10 to 15 a week, at my real estate portfolio. It didn't need a lot because I remember I had that third-party management company. But I am working a lot of hours per day. Even when I'm home, I'm working a lot of hours. Thankfully, my wife was good with it too. But I'm putting in a ton. Anyway, I read this and it's called ROT. So like, you got to put your return on time. So I looked at what I was getting paid, which is pretty good. At this time, I think it was around $500,000 a year at my W-2. It started at like $35,000. So was able to promote quite a bit and get paid a little bit more or a lot more. But after tax, because it's not what you make, it's what you keep. I looked at my 252 units, which was much more tax efficient. I wasn't paying any taxes on that part. My 252 units was making actually more than what my W-2 job was paying me when you consider taxes. And then when I divided 10 hours a week by that and 70 hours, because that's what the book said to do. I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense. So on Saturday, I had a conversation with my wife about it. And that next Monday, I literally called my boss and I put in my notice. That's how quick. Like, it was just like this. I just realized, like, wow, I don't care how much I love my job. I'll never be able to get my return on time. So, and of course, I didn't, I made sure I left on good terms. I worked a few more months or whatever they needed so that they could get a backfill. You never want to burn a bridge. But that was it. Like, that was, once I started realizing it's about return on your time. Time is everything. Time is much more of a leverage than money ever could be. And you should think about that as people build their businesses and stuff, because that's what it is. Like, today, I get a chance to talk to you guys here today and, talk a little bit about my business, my journey. But I have, if you include part-time people, over 150 people working in my business. I mean, that's a lot of time helping me grow my business.
You mentioned your wife a couple times. Talk about the importance of being on the same page with your spouse in this journey, and maybe mention your book a little bit and kind of what you discuss in that, of identifying what your vision is and with what level of intensity. And
yeah, I love that. My wife, I know for a fact I could not be even near where I am today without my wife. She's a nurse, and she, as I got promoted, continued to have to leave her job. And thankfully, as a nurse, they're needed everywhere. But she'd have to leave her job and then get another job, leave her job, get another job. See, it's retail, right? You're not just working nights and weekends, you're also moving. Also, she supported my family when I was working crazy hours, right? When I was traveling across the United States, I didn't mention this, we had 2 small kids. So, for her to really help hold the family together, but then also to make the same level of sacrifices, by living well underneath our means to continue to invest at the rate we are, like, she gave up a lot that she had to sacrifice to be okay with it. The reason I think we did so well with that and didn't get a divorce like half the people, I mean, it's just real. I think a lot of entrepreneurs that grow bigger businesses, I think it's probably over 50% don't end up making it in their marriages. And my wife and I are high school sweethearts. So, like, we've been together a long time. In my book, I shared one of the things we do still to this day that we started right after graduating college. I forget where I read it, but obviously the book Vivid Vision was not out. Good book. We decided to create a vision of what we actually wanted, and we call it the intensity of vision. And in my book, I talk about life is so busy. A month goes by. Like, I can't believe in Wisconsin that it almost feels like we're into spring. Yeah. Summer's coming. Hopefully no more snow. But it's like crazy how fast time goes. And I think there's a lot of people, myself included, that get really caught up in the day-to-day. That next promotion, that next thing that you need to do in your job, the next vacation. And you forget, like, what do I really want in life? Not like what you want today or even like the next month, but you forget, like, what do you really want? And thankfully, my wife and I decided to do this activity once a month, which is pretty easy. We ask ourselves 3 questions. What do we really want in life, right? And then we write it down. And you don't have to keep doing that because usually it doesn't change. You're number 1, right? And we wrote down we wanted financial freedom. We really wanted the opportunity to have enough wealth to be able to spend the time that we want with our kids, to give the kids the type of experiences that we think would be really cool. My wife grew up in a not wealthy family as well. So for her not having money and me not having money, it's something that we wanted to change. I wanted to coach my kids because my dad coached me in a lot of different things, and I wanted to make sure that I was involved. So financial freedom was huge for us. We wanted to build our dream house. And what you basically do, you want to write down a few of those things, right? So every single month, we just reminded them those goals. Second thing you got to do, by when do you want them? And then the third thing you have to write down is at what intensity level are you willing to sacrifice to be able to achieve those things? And that kind of determines the timeline, right? And I think this is where a lot of couples or spouses or partners get it wrong. They do not talk about the intensity level. I told my wife I was a 9. I've always been a high achiever. I was very, very motivated. And if you're a 9, you are literally willing to give up just about everything. No coffees at Starbucks, certainly. I mean, I was making over $100,000 a year as a store manager riding my bike to work, okay? Like, you're willing to sacrifice a lot. Luckily for me, my wife was also an 8. Like, she was very up there. We were both willing to make sacrifices. But I've talked to people, employees I give free coaching where the wife is a 9, but the husband's a 6. He's like, I want financial freedom, but I don't also want to give up my time right now. Like, I don't want to give up the vacations. I don't want to give up the new clothes. I want to go out to eat. I can't live without Starbucks. And guess what? That's okay. Like, you don't have to make the same sacrifices, right? Like, you don't have to give up this year. And there's something to be said. I tell this a lot. There's something to be said about the years that I gave up or like we gave up. Like, those are great years at a young age that maybe we could have done some cool things. It just wasn't as important to us of getting to where we wanted to get. So I think it's just about coming up with where are you both. And by the way, if one's a 6 and one's a 9, obviously you can figure out how to be a 7.5. One's got to sacrifice a little bit more than they wanted to. One has to sacrifice actually a little bit less and be okay with it. Because you're out here just like, there's going to be resentment. So I think, like, to answer your question, that was one of the biggest things that we've done is, and still to this day, right? What do we want now? What does that look like? Obviously, our sacrifices is a lot less today than it was. But before we got into anything, we just level set like, okay, let's remember. I still remember a time. I'll share this quick story. We saw a lot of our friends buying new cars. Then we saw a lot of our friends buying new homes. And we were living in our first home, which was about a $100,000 home. And we just had 2 kids. We had a huge dog. Let's call him a third kid. He was so big. And it would hurt. We knew we were making more money than some of these people jumping into their second, let's just call it like $300,000 house. And we had that discussion, like, right? And it was about, well, we can do, if we want to do that, let's do it. But let's just be real with ourselves. If we buy this house, it's just going to take us, we could look at what we're making and how we're investing. It's just going to take us, let's just call it, I don't know what it was, 3 or 4 more years to achieve financial freedom, right? Because obviously the bigger house would cut into our cash flow, which would cut into our ability to be able to invest. And it helped us make the decision. Well, this house is fine, right? So I think that intensity of vision and just like coming back to it, there's no numbers involved, but it's the first thing we talk about every month.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's so important. And I think from reading your story, you went from that 100,000 to the house that you're in now, or like most people kind of gradually step up, but I thought that was kind of cool. So kind of going back into the operations, into rentals, what does a new acquisition look like for you guys right now? That process, start to finish.
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question. Yeah. I'll try to do my best, and how about I'll give you the summary version of it, and then you ask me additional questions where you want me to go deeper. But for the last 2 years, we've averaged about 100 units a month. We're really growing, right? So we did 1,235 units in 2022. We did 1,116 units last year. And we're off to a pretty good start. We've closed 384 units to start this year. To put that in perspective, obviously that's a lot to be able to do or answer the question that you did of taking an apartment from A to B. And currently right now, if my math is correct, I think we're actually repositioning 11 different apartment complexes at the same time. So first it starts with buying based on my principles. I am a multifamily value-add investor. I do not buy storage. I do not build. I do not buy retail. I do not buy office. I get all the above sent to me weekly, right? Over the years, everybody thinks they can be a real estate investor everywhere. I decided to go really, really deep on only one asset class and what I knew, right? I don't even buy properties that are like, no property that is perfect is a property for me. Like, I need to see something within the property that I feel like with my team now and my business or my business plan, that there's opportunity with that business. So that's like, I think something that seems simple, but as you get wealthier, there's more opportunities. So saying no to the opportunities that are not the right ones and saying yes to the ones that are, help me scale very quickly. We do the apartments that we buy, we built up a pretty big construction arm. So we want to make sure there's some construction component. That's one of our key advantages. And then lastly, we want to make sure that it's in a location that is very, very strong or is going to continue to be strong in the future. So right now we're in 23 different cities in 2 different states, all of it in the Midwest, and all cities and locations we feel really good about. So we'll acquire the property, we'll get it under contract, and then what makes us unique is now we are going to take that property and let's just say it's a deferred maintenance, mismanaged, really tough property, which means I probably got a pretty good deal. So it's going to need a roof. It's going to need all new windows, all new siding, all new common areas, probably a new parking lot. All the units are going to have to be redone, right? So if you're buying a 100-unit apartment, that could be anywhere between like $2 to $4 million worth of CapEx and improvements. So those are very typical for us. So I'll buy that property, and then before it even closes, I will try to work through, just like anything else, speed is a very big part of my plan. I will try to work through all the contingencies as fast as possible and then waive them. And then at this point in my career, not early, and I think you should, take this with a grain of salt. I would not advise newer investors to do this, but if I feel like I know that deal is going to close, I'll actually start the rehab, right? We'll line everything up, but I'll even start the rehab before close. So there's been times, if you can, what I've learned is you want to test those market rents as fast as possible. So if I can at least rehab one of every unit mix before closing, then on the day of closing, I can literally list the market rents and test the market right away before sticking a bunch of money into the future units, right? Because maybe I missed or maybe I was wrong. Well, then you can change your construction plan, right? If you're not going to get as much money in the rent, then maybe you want to put a little bit less into the rehab. Or maybe it exceeded, which validates the construction plan. Or maybe you can even add to the construction plan. So we really try to get aggressive. We line everything up as well too. Like I don't know the last time we closed on a property, and that day we didn't have over 25 people, 25 different team members or vendors on the property. We're power washing the property. We're painting the property. We're putting up new siding, even on day one, right, of the new property. A lot of people don't line this up, but most contracts are at least 60 days. So once you get through most of the due diligence process, you should be able to talk to your sign guy. You should get to talk to a lot of your vendors and have everything there ready to go. We get done in the first 90 days more than most people get done in a year. We hit it really, really hard. And then after the first 90 days, obviously we push a little bit harder. That's when we usually start the rent increases and the rent renewals. We don't do that before we show value to the current residents. And because we're taking over mismanaged properties, there's going to be 25 to 40% that we don't want anyway. You know, we don't want drug dealers in our property. We want our properties to be safe. We don't want people that are attracting the cockroaches because they're not cleaning their apartments. We have to get those people out, right? And then we want to keep as many of the great residents as possible, which is why we focus on providing a ton of value in the first 90 days. That's why all the new lighting is brand new. That's why we get the landscaping. That's why we start cleaning up the common areas. We want to show them this is not the same management company. So we tack the things where we can add value right away. We also offer the great residents, if they want to move at a discount to our newly rehabbed units, we give anybody that's currently renting there that opportunity as well, which really helps speed up our reposition, right? Because if they move from their unit that's not rehabbed to a newly one, now we can rehab that one behind too and get in someone there at market rent. So that's what we're doing. We're rehabbing these units as fast as possible. We're moving through the rest of the CapEx plan. We have 22 rehab teams across the company, and we can rehab up to about 150 units a month. Last year, we did that 3 months of summer. I think we actually hit 153 was our top. So that's 5 complete rehabs per day, like when we hit those numbers. And then our key factor, these are 2 key stats. We finished 2023 on average being able to rehab these properties or these units in 72 hours. Our competition is more like 60 days. So we're 3 days, they're 60. And then our quality, so for every 100 residents that move in, only 1.5 had go-backs. So our quality score is a 98.5. So we're not just doing it fast, but when a resident moves in, which is very hard. In the state of Wisconsin, you got 7 days to be like scratching the trim. Like you can notate anything that's wrong. So to have only 1.5 tenants move in and find something or not to be happy means our quality scores are very, very high. In fact, they're so high that we actually guarantee, if you would move into one of our units and you didn't like it for any reason within the first 14 days, we'll cancel your lease, no questions asked, give you all your money back and you can move out. We're that confident that you're going to love living with us. And if you don't, then we didn't do our jobs. No, you're out of your lease. So we actually guarantee that publicly. And I think that shows the confidence that we have that not only are going to be really happy living in their new rehab unit, but they're going to be happy with the management behind it too.
I think that's so important, like what you said, of showing value to the residents before you go up and jack their rent or change their lease. Or a lot of people will come in day one and just give a rent increase, but you haven't shown what it's for, any justification for it, right? So
right.
I would imagine they're more receptive to it when they see that, when they see the work and the improvements that you're doing to the property.
Yeah, some are. Not obviously all of them.
Yeah.
But I think they forget that, they want all those improvements, but somehow we have to pay for it. Now, some are very receptive and some still aren't, which sucks, but our job is to improve the community, and it's not like we're bringing these communities to this isn't brand new construction.
Yeah.
We try to steal or borrow or take a look at what brand new construction is doing and try to rehab them as well, but it's still not, and we got to be able to pay for it because we're buying, 1970s to 2010 type of apartments, and there's a lot of deferred maintenance and a lot of costs that people don't always see, but we think we do it in a fair way, or at least we feel like the exchange in value is very fair because our occupancy rates are always very high. But I know it's a transition, and we just try to take that transition as delicately as we can, and then in 9 to 12 months, typically, we're actually done with that 100-unit apartment complex. It's brand new. It's all changed over. That time, I'm really paying attention to cash flow and debt service credit ratio. And my whole ability to be able to grow then would be going back to the lender and being like, you want to come walk it? Let's come walk it with the appraiser. I want to show it off, right? And then let's walk the financials. Let's take a look at these P&Ls. Because then obviously what I want to do is I want to get my money back out through a refi. and do it again.
Yeah, that's great. So you have 100 some employees, 20 some rehab teams that are working. We haven't really dove deep into systems and processes, but to have all of these people working for one vision and knowing exactly what to do and how to do it, can you talk about what makes a great system or what makes a great process?
Yeah, we have just over 100 full-time, about 150 part-time, and the guy that runs my company, he's here with me today. One of the best things he does around his leadership is culture. Like, we really, really preach culture at our company, because as a company growing at the scale that we are, it's hard. We need people to understand that it is going to be hard work, and there's going to be intensity at our company, and there's going to be fun. We mix that all up, right? If we're family and we trust each other, there can be a lot. We want high performers that actually thrive in scaling type of environments. So we do look for those and we train them. Our incentives are very aligned with our employees. So like, for example, if you are on a rehab team, you get scored on quality and on speed and on the overall experience. And if you hit all three of those metrics in a month, starting with the top person, the crew captain, and then the rental tech 2 and the rental tech 1, you get a bonus, right? So you do a great job, you get extra pay. Our service techs, like most people don't do this in the industry, but our service techs are actually scored on bonuses as well. Last year, 97% of the time, we did service requests within 48 hours, right? Just 2 days, way faster than our competition. We actually score them on that though too. And we pay them more when their speed is higher. Same with quality and same with experience. So by, incorporating incentives, incorporating culture, and then also giving employees the opportunity to buy real estate and have it managed by this company at the same cost basis as me, which is a flat 5%, right? There's no GC fees, there's no rehab fees. Like literally they make if they're able to acquire a property, and we help them with the financials, we help them with learning real estate, underwriting the deals. We literally let them use our insurance
That's
agent,
awesome.
our lenders relationships. We try to get them to build their own wealth, and then we manage it for them only if they're working for our company. So we don't manage third party, but we manage for mine and obviously my employees. And there's a lot of people that in our company now, I would say over half, that would have a single family house or a duplex or something like that. They're growing their own portfolios, which is really cool. It kind of goes full circle, right?
Yeah. Have you had any employees that have now grown and achieved financial freedom and left you because of that?
Yeah, we had 2 retire. And then I would tell you we probably have 1 right now that could.
Okay.
And hopefully he doesn't, because he's the guy that runs my company. Okay. But on a serious note, I mean, that's the cool place, right? We want to get our employees into a position of financial freedom, but then they like their job so much, they choose to work here. I used to work, obviously, a ton in my property management company. I now work about a day and a half on strategy and maybe key hires and process upgrades. But that's about it. And I choose to do those because I love those things. And I want to put all of my employees, directors, leaders in a position to truly love it too. But if they don't, you just got to work at the company 7 years.
Okay.
And then you got to help hire your backfill. If you do that, we'll manage your properties forever and you can go sit on a beach.
Wow.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, right?
Austin, you should think about implementing that.
Logan, tell us, out of doing over 4,000 units, I'm sure you've had some really slam dunk great deals and probably some nightmares. Maybe what's a great deal? What's your best deal? What's your worst deal?
Yeah, which one do you want first?
Start with the bad.
All right. Yeah, I'd probably say I have a couple that come to my mind. Not too many. I've been pretty fortunate. But the deal that I've hated the most was this 28-unit apartment that I bought. And I'll be super... I hate when people in podcasts don't give it straight. I was, 5 or 6 years into my real estate career, and I literally thought it didn't matter what property I bought, I'm going to reposition it, and I'm going to implement my systems, and I'm going to run the shit out of it. And it's going to be worth a lot of money. So I bought this 28-unit apartment. Of course, it was a great deal, because they all are, in a terrible location. And again, I was arrogant and cocky at this time and just thought it didn't matter. It didn't. The location... I'm just going to do my thing. And I did. Spent a ton of money and a ton of time. Only 28 units. And at this point, I think I was around 300 units. The 28 units, literally my property management company spent 80% of the time on this 28 units and 20% of the time on the last, 270. It took that much time. I mean, I put so much money and so much time into it. We just could not get great residents in there. Every time we had somebody, we had some crazy stories, right? We had people like just shitting in the common areas. Like we've had like drug busts left and right. I should have known because when I bought the deal, the day of closing, someone got shot right outside of it. And
that's a doozy.
That's the north side of Milwaukee.
That's a red flag.
That's a red flag. That's a red flag. So you think of like, oh, it'll be fine. I just got to rehab this thing and then just run it well and put in great tenants. Well, I hate to say it, but like when you're in the middle of a drug zone and crime, it's really hard to attract great residents, right? You're going to attract, I mean, there are some crazy stories. I probably can't share a lot on here. I shouldn't. So I sold it. So I don't own it anymore, and I sold it. And fortunately enough, I ended up selling it as must have been 2020, or hard to lose money because luckily, the values were going up and I bought it for such a good one. But if you factor the time that I had and my company had in it, I lost a shitload of money. If I had to factor the time, like dollar-wise, if you actually look at what I bought it for, what I put into it, what I sold for it, I think it was like, about flat, $10K here or there. No way I didn't lose over $300,000 just when you consider the amount of resources that I put into that freaking deal. So 100% of my deals are in great locations. I don't own a single property that I'm not excited about the location of where it currently is or where it's going. I'll still buy deals that are mismanaged or that have crime. Bought a 122 unit complex in Green Bay that did have a shooting the day before. So same situation. But the worst part about that area was my property. I much prefer to have the worst property in the best area than a good property in the worst location, right? Big learning for me. You cannot operate or process out a terrible location unless you buy everything in that area. Best deal, I would probably say, my mom would say my best deal is our office building that we have currently. It's the first public elementary school in the state of Wisconsin. It's
really?
Like this 35,000 square foot school that I got for about $400K. Ridiculous. Now, I would tell you that's among my worst.
Okay.
She was a teacher for 30 plus years, so she just loves that it was the first public elementary school.
That's pretty sweet.
It is sweet. It is gargoyles on the outside because apparently that's what you did in elementary school.
Got to protect the kids.
Right, yeah. You got. But it's been an okay investment overall. I think my best smaller deal to be more relatable probably would be the 12 unit apartment that I bought. I bought that thing at like $18,000 a door. And it's worth about $110,000 a door. I think we're getting close to $1,200 rents there now. And we're getting $250 rents when I bought it. It's relative because there's 12 units. I've had much better 100+ unit deals when it comes to overall like wealth building. But that building also, I guess, is not only is, if you go by percentage of increase, very, very high. But I think I shared this at the beginning of the podcast. It changed my mindset about looking at something as a business. So we still have an original renter in there, by the way, too.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool.
One of the cool backstory. It wasn't like the first middle school.
I know. No backstory. No.